Mr. Hoshi, Action Stations. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bill and Frank Eat Pop Culture. I am Frank. Alongside me, as always, the Jamie Bamber to my Edward James Almost, Bill. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. Oh man, you make me miss Battlestar Galactica. I should really go back and rewatch that show.
You think it would hold up?
Definitely. Certainly from a looks and production point of view, that show still looks like it could be made right now. But I think even its political metaphor is probably even more relevant now than it was then.
Yeah, I just still have the bad taste in my mouth from how it ended.
Yeah, the last season in general is. I think we talked about this during the Summit at Sea off podcast. Me, you, and good old John talked about it, how that show was so much better when it was leaning into the political stuff and leaning away from the religious stuff. And then the end of the show, it leaned so heavily into the religion. It was just got really confusing. No, even the hardcore watchers couldn't really understand what was happening with half the stuff. So
to this day, I have no idea.
Yeah,
but still, as a whole, the series had some of the best television moments ever. I mean,
there was a couple Battlestar Galactica panels at Comic-Cons, for its 10th anniversary or something like that. And listening to the writers and stuff and some of the actors, I don't even think the people that wrote it really knew what the hell happened at the end.
Yeah. So check this out. So 4th of July, it was pretty cool. We were sitting out on our back deck, and there was people shooting off fireworks in a neighborhood around the corner. There was people shooting off fireworks in my neighborhood down the street. We were just kind of sitting on our deck watching everybody else's fireworks.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really want some fireworks. So the next day after work on Friday would be the next day. Yesterday, I stopped at because they're legal to buy now in Pennsylvania. So I stopped at the firework place, and I bought $300 worth of fireworks. And I came home, and I was all excited. So I had a friend come over and took the kids and my mom and my wife up to the common space in our neighborhood, and which is where they were setting them. Other neighbors were setting them off the night before. I was setting them off, and I kind of built up from the smaller stuff that I bought to the bigger stuff that I bought. And the bigger stuff that I bought was amusement park grade fireworks, and these fuckers were loud. They were loud when they launched, and they were loud when they displayed at the top.
I wouldn't trust you.
Yeah. So, and we were drinking while we were doing it too, which is bad. So any kids listening to this, don't drink and set off fireworks. Don't do this at home. So we're doing it, and I kind of lose track of time because it gets dark late this time of year. So we're up there. We started late anyway, and while we're doing it, there's fireworks going off in another neighborhood down the street, just as big as mine. There's another set of fireworks going off in another neighborhood around the corner, just as big as mine and as often. So we're sitting there, and it's 9:21. I remember because I looked at my watch, and I set off one of these boxes that just shoots off 21 rockets, do 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 do. And these two your typical old, grumpy, curmudgeon-y men with zero testosterone left in their bodies, with their big friggin' bellies and big asses, shaped like Donald Duck, come stomping up together. They come stomping up, and the guy's going, stop. So he comes up, and he's like, all right, guys, enough with the fireworks. And immediately I look at my watch, I go, oh shit, it is 9:20. So I go, yeah, no worries, man. Sorry about that. In my head, I'm like, conversation's over.
Right.
But he had I guess he worked up, I guess he was afraid to come confront me. And he had apparently, I guess worked up this speech in the mirror before he came over, because he had this speech ready and he was going to get it out.
He had an agenda.
Yeah, he had an agenda. And I think he was completely surprised that I was so agreeable. But he brought his buddy with him. I guess that was his muscle in case things got, So he came up and he's like, if it's not approved by the HOA, you can't be doing it on common ground in the neighborhood, and it's against Pennsylvania state law, which isn't true. And I was like, hey, buddy, I said okay. And he was like, it's getting late. And he just kept going. And I was like, dude, I said, it's all good. I lost track of time. All good. And then he huh. And the whole time he was talking and going through his spiel, he was like looking at the ground. He wouldn't even look at me. Him and his buddy, like, they stomp off together, like, and they like, and they stomp back to their, they live in like the, in the carriage homes across the street from my neighborhood, where like all the old people live. There's like people waiting in their driveways for them to come back, and like then they all congregate in one of the driveways and they're like talking, and
we showed them.
Yeah, like we went over there and we told that son of a bitch, and he was like, yeah, I'm sorry, sir. Can I suck your dick? And I was like, you're not going to suck my dick. And so anyway, so we went back, and Isabel was all upset. She was like, they can't ruin our fun. And I was like, Isabel, it's 9:20. It's all good. We shouldn't be doing it anyway. I lost track of time. So then we get back to the garage, and my buddy Mike's there, and I'm drinking beers, and I'm like, it's going to be really hard for those guys when they walk out on their front doorstep tomorrow morning and there's a big human shit right on their doormat.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, make an enemy, right?
Yeah.
All right, so anyway.
You know what? Before you go, that brings me back to my best firework memory of you is standing on top of a car using a firework that you're supposed to put on the ground, like one of the mortar ones.
Yeah, that's what I was doing last night. Yeah, mortar.
Yeah, except you had it over your shoulder like it was a rocket launcher after the Eagles won the NFC Championship game.
Yes,
which was incredible. Like, you lucky you didn't lose an ear or something. You're lucky you didn't Jason Pierre-Paul yourself,
or kill somebody,
or kill somebody. Correct.
Yeah. Well, that's what'll happen when you start drinking at 6 a.m. for a 6:45 game. All right, kids, don't drink from 6 a.m. till 6:45 and shoot off fireworks over your shoulder. And with that, Bill, let's go!
I'm back, and I'm better than ever. Got a knack for making things better. Face facts.
All right, Bill, so it's been probably, now correct me if I'm wrong, my math isn't good. But
no, never has been.
Never has been, and I'm not going to start now. So it's
kind of a weird quality for an accountant, but whatever.
Yeah, it's not my strongest attribute. It's been 2 or 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks since we've talked about any wrestling.
Well, I mean, I want to make the point that the reason we can get away with that is because this is not a wrestling podcast.
Right, I was going to say, which, if anybody's upset about that,
Matt Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Ryan. This is not a wrestling podcast. So there's going to be weeks where we don't get into the business. You know what I'm saying?
Bitch on somebody else's Instagram account.
Yeah. Fuck me. Anyway, so that being said, since we last discussed wrestling and since we went on our summit at sea, there's been a decent amount of activity in the wrestling business.
A decent amount. The wrestling industry has been turned on its fucking ear.
So we had Stomping Grounds, which was an interesting night of emotions because you had a first half of and we're not going to get into Stomping Grounds in detail unless there's anything specific you want to talk about, but I wasn't planning on it. The first half of the show was, including the pre-show, I thought was a stellar show. Yep. And then the second half of the show felt like it crawled back into its safe space that it's been in for the last 2 or 3 years.
I don't think we need to. It feels sort of dated by now. But I think you hit it. Like, I was really an hour into that pay-per-view. We were both like, okay, WWE's really, they're making a statement. It's going to be great. And then it just sort of fell off a cliff. And then, we talked about this going into it, that Rollins and Corbin as a main event is just not, you're not going to get a great match out of that. And it wasn't. It was more of an angle than a match. But I think the big noteworthy things that came out of that was WWE's attendance at that pay-per-view was mid-90s when they were almost out of business level gate. So
yeah, well, I mean, you made a comment on the show a couple of weeks ago where you said, how when things are in dire straits is when you're throwing shows in Tacoma, Washington.
Right. And you can't sell them.
Not to jump ahead, and we'll go back to where we are in the timeline here, but apparently today I read that they're selling 2-for-1 tickets to Extreme Rules next week.
Yeah, I believe it. It's going to take some time. It took time for the audience for the live event audience to sort of, it was a sellout every night, even a couple of years ago when the product wasn't that great. And Eric Bischoff has always said, like, it takes a long time for people's habits to change. When WCW eventually lost the war to WWE, even though WCW was beating them for the infamous 83 weeks, WWE had a better show for like a good 4 or 5 months before the ratings reflected it, because people's habits are hard to break. It took a long time for the attendance to come down. Now it's going to take some time for it to go back up. If it does. That attendance up in the Pacific Northwest, which is usually sells really well. Like, I don't know about Tacoma so much, but like Seattle, Portland, they usually sell really well. And Raw and SmackDown that week were dreadful. And I think that was the first in a series of alarm bells that made the WWE do what it did, which was the big news in the industry. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think that
and I think we're almost there. The only one other thing I wanted to mention was before that pay-per-view on Stomping Grounds that day, Seth Rollins sends out this tweet, which was kind of strange, and it is dated, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I do think it is very important to recognize what this tweet meant. You know, just coming out of nowhere from a guy like Seth, who's pretty docile on social media usually.
Yep.
You know, he sends out this tweet that says, hands down, best wrestling in the world. You know, WWE is the best wrestling in the world. And I don't have the exact tweet in front of me. Okay, so he sends that out, and I kind of was like, whoa, that was weird.
Burn it down!
Then the pay-per-view comes that night. The first half of that pay-per-view, like I said, was stellar. You could tell there was like a locker room get him for the Gipper speech. You know, I thought it was really strange when Ricochet won the title and they all went backstage and everybody was standing around clapping, and Triple H comes up and hugs them. And it reeked of, all right, guys, enough fucking around. Let's put the pedal to the metal.
And that was unfortunately the high point of the show. The Ricochet Joe match was the high point of the show.
Yeah, agreed. So anyway, Stomping Grounds, you know, ended kind of flat the way it did. And then this Twitter war ensues between Seth Rollins and Will Ospreay, because Seth Rollins sends out another tweet
Burn it down!
saying, I'm doubling down, best wrestling in the world. I'm the best wrestler in the world. Nobody does what I do as well as I do it.
No one alive.
So Will Ospreay sends out a 2-word tweet that says, I'm alive. You know, coming off, you know, just winning the super best of the Super Juniors. You know, Will Ospreay is, you know, I know you'll disagree with me about this, but, you know, Will Ospreay, a lot of people will tell you that he's arguably depending on what you like, who you are, would say is better than Ricochet, as good as Ricochet at the very least. So him and Seth Rollins go into this Twitter war, and I don't know, Bill, what did you like? How do you think it looked on Seth in the WWE?
Well, first, to address what you said, I think Will Ospreay, depending on what you're talking about, like, I think he's probably the most or like the second or third most athletic wrestler in the world in terms of things he's able to do. Now, do I think Will Ospreay matches have the best psychology in the world? I don't. I think he's in the category with the Young Bucks and even Ricochet before WWE.
Do Ricochet matches have the best psychology?
They didn't. But what would you say about the Joe match? Yes, it did. Like, it depends where you're working. Ring of Honor in particular, and even New Japan to an extent. New Japan's sort of weird because they're like kind of schizophrenic, where like certain performers and matches, they're very heavy on the psychology, and then other ones are not. I feel like,
but I think that's because in New Japan, and I could be wrong, but I feel like that's because in New Japan it depends who's in the ring, because there are guys in there that are calling. They're not produced matches. They're not booked matches. They're not overly scripted matches. It depends who's in that ring calling it and directing that match while they're between the ropes. Whereas in WWE, it really matters what booking agent you get put with.
Right. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, like, for instance, like Will Ospreay and Zack Sabre are awesome. They're awesome wrestlers. But when they wrestle in Japan, it's a spot fest and it's great wrestling, but there's nothing in terms of like trying to really tell a story in the ring.
I fucking hate Zack Sabre.
I don't think it's a coincidence that like last year in New Japan, probably the best matches psychology wise involved Jericho, a guy who's, WCW, WWE trained, where it's more emphasized. I think Jericho's series with, first with Naito and then with Kenny are, I think what Jericho is so good at is he took he took the really good elements of his training in WWE and WCW and combined them with the New Japan style to create a sort of hybrid where there's the big high spots, but there's also telling a story, which I think is going to be the way of the future. I think that's going to be much more what AEW is like. I think AEW is going to have elements of both and be a really great product.
Well, I think that's one of the main reasons why Jericho's there.
Right, I agree. And even like it's tough to say, Cody's Tokyo Dome match against Juice Robinson, he was hurt, so it wasn't the greatest match in the world. But like, I think he's another one that he has brought elements of what he learned in being in WWE since he was 19. WWE gets in trouble because they overproduce. Correct. Like don't overproduce, but produce. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be there. There's a really good middle ground where some of it's called on the fly, but parts are produced. I think when it's all spots called out there in the ring, I like having a story, which is why Cody and Dustin was the best match for me in like a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I mean, we got off track there, so the Twitter war.
Burn it down!
I thought it was super weird at first, just like you did. Rollins' first tweet where he hashtagged it with like best wrestling on the planet. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, Raw is fucking unwatchable.
Right.
Like he's great. There's nothing wrong with Seth Rollins' work.
If there's an issue in WWE, it is not Seth Rollins.
But like, is his program with Corbin the best wrestling on the planet? Like, no, of course not. That's ludicrous.
Well, can I one up you on that one? Is his program with Corbin, his girlfriend Becky Lynch, and Lacey Evans the best wrestling on the planet?
No, we can get into what they're doing with Seth and Becky, which is terrible. Which hopefully Heyman will kibosh. We'll see. But then after that, like when Ospreay fired, like even the way you just said it now, like it's going to be easy to tell. Like me and you are going to sort of be on opposite armies. I thought Ospreay's like you said it like, and Will Ospreay responded with, "I'm alive," and to me it was much more cocky than that.
What voice did he say it? He say it with in your head?
I'm alive. Like
it is much more cocky.
I'm the fucking man, and it's like I worked at WWE for 12 years, so it's going to be hard for me. One of the crazy things that you hear, like if you listen to wrestling podcasts, you listen to when Conrad asked Eric Bischoff what was the most surprising thing about WWE when you went to work there, was Bischoff was like, I had never experienced sort of the intense loyalty that everybody backstage has for the product. Like even when it's something bad, they're intensely loyal to it. And that bled over to like people like me who are in production. So like I'm trying to be more unbiased when we talk about it. But my first reaction, honestly, was like, who the fuck are you, Will Ospreay? Like, go fuck yourself. That was my first even though he's probably right. My first response was to immediately take Rollins aside. And then when it just got I thought it was awesome that other wrestlers started to jump on. Like I thought it was really ballsy of Baron Corbin to get in there. And then Jericho made fun of Corbin, and then Becky Lynch got involved, and it was like this whole thing. And I thought it was really great. Like it was great for everybody in the business. Like when this kind of stuff happens, whether it's a work or a shoot, like this was, I think, a shoot, like real.
Well, based on what happened later, definitely real.
Yes, because that's when it went. Like when Seth put out the tweet comparing his bank account to Ospreay's.
Burn it down!
That's when I was like, Seth. I think even his later tweet, he said as soon as he hit send, he realized he had crossed the line. That generally, you don't bring up families, you don't bring up money, that kind of thing. That's like the cardinal rules. You don't go after kids. You don't go at like even girlfriends is sort of fair game as we see. But wives.
Well, listen, if you're going to make it the gimmick on TV, then yeah, it's fucking fair game.
Right. But like wives, kids, especially if the wife and the kids aren't in the business, like that's not cool. And then money is not cool. Like Seth he's the WWE champion and he works for WWE. Of course, his paycheck is going to be, it's a global company. Like he's going to be making a lot of money. For the longest time, Ospreay was an indie guy who was putting out great matches, but probably wasn't rich, that was shitty. And I'm really glad he decided to backtrack on it. And be like,
yeah, cause you know me, like I'm a huge, like I'm like in love with Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
My reaction from the start was kind of like, Seth, what are you fucking doing? Like, this isn't you. Like, just shut up and wrestle. Like your work, you're the one, if not, one of 3 guys in that company whose work more than speaks for itself. Like, you don't have to send out that tweet.
Right.
Well,
I kind of disagree with that, but finish your point.
When he said, "Oh, we already got a guy like you that's better, and he just won the championship or whatever," and it's like, come on, Seth, like, what are you doing here? Like Will Ospreay and Ricochet put on, now depends what kind of wrestling you like. Jim Cornette fucking hated it. It was a spot fest, but if you think about what it was beautiful to watch. Whether it wasn't a seminar in psychology, but it was a spot fest. Ricochet and Will Ospreay put on one of the most amazing visual spectacles that I've ever seen, 2 or 3 years ago at New Japan Pro Wrestling. Will Ospreay was just as much a part of that match as Ricochet was. I just felt like Seth was going after the wrong guy.
Ospreay invited it. Like Seth didn't put out his best wrestling on the planet tweet and tag Will Ospreay on it. Like Ospreay responded to him. I get it that we kind of disagree on the level of cockiness of Ospreay's response, but it wasn't Seth that brought Ospreay into the conversation. Ospreay did it himself.
See, in my head, Ospreay was like, "I'm here."
But he was a mouse. He was a British mouse.
Yeah, he was he was Stuart Little. So but like you alluded to it this week, Seth, and I don't know what prompted it. I honestly like to think that I don't think anybody in WWE told him to walk it back. I honestly feel like Seth, because Seth comes from the indies, and Seth worked his way up, unlike a lot of people. And I think Seth honestly felt like a piece of shit for getting to where those tweets got.
Well, also, there's no way he didn't see the reaction in the social media world from not from his contemporaries, but from people like Lance Storm and Taz, like veterans who were like, dude, don't do that. I think he was telling the truth when he walked the tweet back and put out there, like, I knew right away when I sent it that it was bad. I think he knew. And then when all these veterans are like, dude, don't do that. I think he didn't have, I don't think anybody in WWE told him to walk it back either, but I think he was certainly, maybe he doesn't walk it back if nobody said anything. Maybe, I think he still would have.
Yeah, but my point is, it shows that he's a guy who gives a shit about what the legends and what the veterans think.
Yeah.
And he's not one of these young guys that's like, no, I'm going to tweet whatever the fuck I want. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, no, I agree.
World's different.
You know what, though? I agree with you that first tweet, the very first tweet he put out where he's like, best wrestling on the planet, was definitely weird.
Burn it down!
But in retrospect, everybody could see that WWE's product was suffering. It wasn't great. Everybody knows it. Even Seth knew it, that the 3 hours of Raw was intolerable. But I do like that he kind of was like, I'm the champion. I'm the face of this company. I'm gonna put it on my shoulders to talk good about it. I like that he was not a very prolific tweeter at all. But I like that he's like, somebody's got to stand up for this company, and it might as well be the guy wearing the belt. In a way, it almost increases, it almost makes the title more important. I really feel that way.
Well, no, you're right. He's the face of the company. Yeah, I get all that. But it really, my point is, as bad as the product's been, it really opened up the WWE for a barrage of just shit. He says that, and then the next night they have a fucking tag team. They have a tug of war match between Strowman and Lashley, and people are tweeting pictures of it saying best wrestling on the planet. It's
right. Yeah, I agree. But but I really honestly think the Seth Rollins Twitter thing, which opened WWE all this criticism, was yet another one of these bunch of series of events that culminated with what WWE did. So I think it actually, in the grand scheme of things, it was actually a really positive thing. It got us to the point where Lashley and Strowman are still in their program, but last week on Raw, they did something with them that really got over, and I think
right.
I think Seth Rollins' thing, that whole Twitter thing, I don't think it was a big reason, but I think it was one of the many little reasons and then a few big reasons that caused WWE to make the big change they made.
And of course, you're talking about bringing in Paul Heyman to run Raw and Eric Bischoff to run SmackDown, not in a phony general manager, apparently, not in a phony general manager on-screen way, but in a legit showrunner backstage way.
I think they could both end up with on-screen characters. Certainly Heyman's still going to be Brock Lesnar's advocate, and Bischoff could end up with an on-screen role, but I think the difference between their roles in the past and now is that they'll have both a working role and a shoot role. This was such a good decision by WWE. I can't possibly put over this decision enough. Not only because I want to fillet Eric Bischoff, but WWE has made its best decisions in the past when they realize we're in trouble, we need help.
You've worked alongside both Heyman and Bischoff.
I mean, moderately.
I've done stuff with both of them for network shows and interviews and stuff like that, but not really with not in creative or anything like that. But you were at the company when they were actively involved.
Yeah.
What do you expect from both of them respectively on their shows?
Well, I think number one,
changes. What changes and what do you think?
I think number one, you're going to see a more edgy product, which you already have. In the 1 week that Heyman has run Raw, there was edgier content. There was the big spot with Strowman and Lashley. There was cursing, more cursing. He brought up the Street Profits immediately, which is a Heyman-ish tag team. I think you're just going to start to see less. I don't know if they'll go full Attitude Era. They won't, because they answer to too many sponsors. But certainly they'll edge more towards PG-13. Kofi Kingston gave the finger to Samoa Joe on SmackDown. That was shocking to me. That is something you just wouldn't have seen it last month. I think both Bischoff and Heyman are a billion times more in touch with what is quote unquote cool now than Vince McMahon is. Listen to John Moxley's interview. His big problem was the guy making the decisions is completely out of touch. He's like a crazy old man. And I think I don't know whether it was Triple H or Vince realized it himself or Shane or Stephanie but I think somebody got to him, was listen, your shit, the shit you're doing is not working. And this is the same thing that happened in the mid-90s. Vince was super stubborn about not changing his product until it got to the point where it's dude, we're going to go out of business. We need to change our product. And back at that time, it was he handed the reins over, but he let Pritchard and Vince Russo have a lot more influence, and the product changed and things got better.
That being said, do you think this was Pritchard in his ear?
I think Pritchard certainly played a role. I know that, Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff are definitely friends. Apparently, I was reading, wrestling dirt sheet websites and stuff, and apparently, the Heyman thing had sort of been building. He's sort of been gathering or been being given more creative, and he's had more influence over the last couple months. The Bischoff news surprised everybody, including me. But in retrospect, looking back, I feel certainly Pritchard played a part. And I know that what honestly played a part is Bischoff has a relationship, a good relationship with Fox. And that's why he got SmackDown. 100%.
So, Bill, I really owe you a pretty big thank you.
I feel like that's true all the time, but what specifically this time?
I really, really am digging your Podcoin app recommendation.
Podcoin is insane. I love it. It's the only way I listen to my podcast now. You can actually fire up Podcoin and get paid to listen to your favorite podcasts.
And all you need to do is go to the iPhone or Android app store, download the app, and if you put in this special code, CULTURE, CULTURE, you're going to get 300 points right off the bat to your first cup of coffee at Starbucks, to your first Amazon gift card, to your first charity. Listen to podcasts, earn money while you're doing it, download the Podcoin app, Podcoin, Podcoin, Podcoin. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts.
AEW certainly, if you go off Double or Nothing and Fyter Fest, like leaning toward the adult end of the spectrum. And I think WWE, I don't know if they'll go full adult. They certainly won't ever put on something like Moxley and Janela did at Fyter Fest, but I think they'll go closer. I think we could definitely see some color, brother, at some point on a pay-per-view at WWE, which would be awesome.
Like
I think Bischoff and Heyman both recognize that if used in the right way, sparingly enough, that kind of stuff is really impactful. I'll be interested to know. I should really ask some of my friends that still work there. Like, I don't know exactly when. It seems like Heyman took over right away, but he was like kind of already there every week. I'm curious to know when Bischoff will get like full control. But Bischoff's moving to Connecticut, which is nuts. Like that is crazy to me. Like, that's one of the things, even on his podcast, he always said, like, I never want him to live in Connecticut. But he's taken this seriously enough where he's moving his family from Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere, to Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the timing is of when Bischoff's going to actually like fully take the reins of SmackDown. But even with Raw, there's the fact that Heyman's been there for a while, gaining power and gaining more responsibility scares me a little bit, because there's some things going on right now that I wish they would have abandoned a while ago. Like, it seems like they've just doubled down on Shane. I mean, it seems like he's not going anywhere. Like, this fucking
Certainly,
thing is just going to keep going.
I think you could see him go somewhere after SummerSlam. It seems like that's where they're building to with him. And then I think you could see him take a hiatus. It looks like it'll be him and Reigns again at SummerSlam in some sort of gimmick stipulation thing. And then I think Reigns will win and Shane will go away for a little while. At least that's what I hope. It looks like it'll be Reigns and Shane and Drew and Taker, I think, which would be awesome for McIntyre, especially if they put him over, which left to Vince, Taker would go over for no reason at all. But if Heyman's in there, then I think maybe you could start to see some good decisions, especially with the booking. But again, Heyman scares me a little just because some of his ideas, like, he goes off the rails, but that's why it's good that, like, yes, he's the executive director, but he will have people sort of keeping him in check from going full Heyman. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's when Vince Russo was effective, though. Vince Russo was effective when he had Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon to filter him.
Right. But even like when you tell me when you were watching the Seth and Becky versus Mike and Maria Kanellis when they did the pregnancy thing, I was like, oh God, this reeks of Heyman.
Yeah, but I mean, I kind of liked it. It was different.
Oh, me too. I'm not saying I disliked it, but I was like, that segment was one of the clear like indications to me, like, okay, Heyman's doing this now.
Let's talk about briefly, and then I want to get into Fyter Fest. This Seth Rollins and Becky angle. If I have to hear Michael, first of all, you had to sit there and listen to me and Johnny Beaver go on and on about it during Stomping Grounds, but I feel like every week Michael Cole gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
You want to talk about somebody who's completely out of fucking touch and is just a wind up, pull the string talking head. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't even know what's going on in the ring. He's just listening to whatever's being piped into his ear.
100%.
But if I have to hear Michael Cole say Becky's boyfriend or Seth's girlfriend,
or call Seth Rollins the man's man one more time.
Oh, it's just,
yeah.
But anyway, the Seth and Becky angle, I don't know why, because I love them both, but I hate it.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Really hate it.
And I think it's going to have to be a thing where like it went into motion. You know what? I sort of understand I understand their motivation. Like we live in this world where social media is so important now. And it was a thing where it became very evident on social media that they were together and they didn't want to just ignore it on TV. So they started to go with it, and it's really bad. And I feel like Heyman probably knows it. They probably all know it, but now they've gone too far. So they just kind of got to blow it off with the Extreme Rules match and then sort of slowly let it go away. Like not that they'll break up or anything in real life, but slowly start like not concentrating on it as much. At least that's what I hope they do, because it's not good. Like especially when they're making the two of them be like cutesy with each other. It hurts both of their characters.
Yeah, it's just I don't know, not my thing.
Before we move on from that real quick, did you notice a change on Monday in the announcing at all? Not Cole so much. He's still WWE is so different than any other, even the New Japan or Ring of Honor or AEW. Maybe AEW will get there at some point, but WWE has so many like sponsors and obligations that like it's really hard to be a play-by-play. So I have a certain amount of I feel for Cole a little bit. I mean, I think he should be replaced. Like I think he should have been replaced a while ago, not because it's been the same voice for too long. But I do feel for him because he's got a lot of masters to serve when he's doing that job. But I did notice, especially with Corey and Renee in particular,
yeah,
I thought they let her off the leash a little bit.
Yeah, you could tell there was less in her ear. To me, that's Heyman.
Yeah, my favorite moment was so Corey Graves and Carmella are dating, like kayfabe, like for real. And I love that during a Moment of Bliss segment when Carmella came out and Corey Graves was like, how dare she interrupt the goddess? And Renee was like, I don't think you're that upset. You know, that kind of, which was, I thought, that was great. That's like personality. Like, that's what I want. That was like, that to me, that was like, oh, it's such a good little moment that if they start letting her, because Renee Young is awesome. Like, I got to work with her a decent amount when I was there. She's awesome. She's such a cool chick. And she's coming across as like this vanilla nothing. And I hope they let her off the leash a little bit to let some of her attitude out.
Agreed. To me, it was beyond a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
And to me, those are the little changes that I expect to see come from Bischoff and Heyman. Like, I would expect to see less scripted. Like, to me, like, when I looked at the Joe and the Kofi promo, like, to me, I felt like that promo was less scripted.
I agree.
I felt like there was bullet points, they hit them, but the rest was those two guys working off each other.
Especially Joe. Just let Joe be Joe.
Yeah, Joe doesn't need any fucking help.
Right. And you know what? To get like super nerdy, like analytical about it, I was reading that like the ratings for Raw and SmackDown were kind of the same. Like they went up a little bit, but the rating for 18 to 34-year-olds went up like 40%, which is like, that's
the important one.
Yeah, to me, that means the news of Heyman and Bischoff moved the needle.
Yeah, and you would expect it to move the needle with like 40-year-old fucking losers like us, but
right.
Kids that are 18 to 34, like that's important.
Yeah, it makes me sad that we're out of the demographic. We're too old. We're not the most desirable demographic anymore, which sad.
Yeah, I mean, we're closer to being the old stodgy guys that yelled at me about the fireworks last night.
Yeah. We're so close to watching NCIS.
So let's talk about
Fyter Fest.
I
mean, again, like we don't have to spend forever on it.
No, I don't want to spend forever on it, but I just have a couple just point. I'm not going to go like match by match. I have a couple points I want to make.
Go for it,
and then you take it. I thought the pre-show match was with the best friends Trent Beretta and Chucky T. And SCU and Private Party. I thought it was one of the better pre-show matches I've seen in a long time.
I like Private Party.
Yeah, Private Party put on a fucking show that night.
Yeah,
and I really look forward to seeing what those guys do. And I watched it again, and it just became clear to me that match was designed for SCU and Best Friends to go out and put those guys over.
I agree. I actually think most of this pay-per-view was that, to be honest. I think Cody wrestling Darby Allin was to get Darby Allin over.
Yep.
I think John Moxley wrestling Joey Janela is now a legit. That dude got the rub on that show. That's like that guy was wrestling in bars like not long ago.
Oh,
Now
hold on. I'll get to that. Hold on.
now he's a legit main. He's a legit like draw, and I think the rub was that. I mean, that really worked.
We need to abandon ship and release all escape pods and secure all animals in the zoo on the librarian gimmick ASAP.
Oh, God. Yep.
I like Leva Bates. I don't like the librarian gimmick. It is fucking awkward.
Yep.
It is not well written.
Nope.
It is going to. Everybody talked such a big game. Now listen, I don't watch Impact because I've tried to watch it. Like I'm not going to pay extra to watch it, and it's not on any cable service that I'm able to get here.
Me neither.
Which apparently they're working on, but I don't know who Allie Impact is, but they talked a big game about her coming in. She looked like absolute dog shit in her match with Leva Bates.
Yep.
Okay, so that's what to say about that.
Isn't she wrestling Brandy next?
Yeah.
That's going to be brutal because Brandy's awesome as a character, but still kind of, greenish.
Yeah, she's green in the ring.
Also a super nice person, just FYI.
Can we agree? Well, she must be if she's married to Cody. Can we agree that MJF we're witnessing like a future fucking legend?
Yeah. He reminds me so much of like 1999 short hair Chris Jericho heel turn Jericho. Not just because like he comes out with the scarf and stuff, but the swagger and the arrogance, and he's so good on the mic. I love that line with the, your mom swallows was awesome. Was so great.
I used to be a gamer, and then I lost my virginity at a fucking game.
So great. He's great. He's so great. Like I can't wait to see him in a main event level program. I mean, because it's bound to happen.
Oh yeah.
Like I would love, if Hangman Page wins the title, I would love an MJF Hangman Page program. That'd be great.
I want to see MJF in a well written program with anybody. And then of course, the Moxley Janela match. I was not a huge fan of Dean in WWE. Like he was always one of these guys where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I always felt like
he's leashed.
He always, and I didn't realize it until he left in his interview with Jericho, but he just always seemed to me like he would walk up to the edge and then walk back. Like he never went to the next level. And now we know that it wasn't him, because an unleashed John Moxley is one of the best things in wrestling. I mean, he is
fucking insane is what he is.
Yeah, did you see the pictures of his fucking back after that match?
Man, I haven't seen a match like that. I mean, I can't even tell you. I literally could not tell you. Definitely somewhere in the Attitude Era with that much violence. Probably something with Mick Foley in the Attitude Era, but like, holy God, was that. And
just the simple move of the atomic drop with the bare feet onto the tacks.
Dude, and the meme or the GIF or GIF, however you say it, that's destroying the world is him fucking spitting out the thumbtack.
Oh my God, that's like the tooth in the nose.
That match was so brutal. It was so awesome. I don't want to see that match a lot, but it's been so long since something like that has happened that it was. No,
you don't want to see that match a lot, and that was the problem with ECW, is that you got desensitized to it. You want to see it every once in a while,
right? And you know what? It's a fucking star-making turn for Janela.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. Janela, he's proved that he's not just the guy that gets thrown off roofs into the back of pickup trucks. I mean, the guy can work in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to be a technical marvel, but he can do enough. But his gimmick is, I mean, he's sort of like he's the modern day Mick Foley. Like Mick Foley was never an acrobat, but he could work. And I feel like Janela is the modern day Mick Foley, because like he's Mick Foley if like social media and shit like that had existed in the mid 90s. he's just willing to do whatever the fuck to his body to get himself over. And that's exactly what Mick's whole career was.
And last but not least, what'd you think of the Cody chair shot?
I get you seemed really angry about people's reaction, which I understand. Like, so to clarify for everybody listening, the reaction to Cody taking the unprotected headshot by the chair was really everybody was like, there is no place for that in our industry. And like, I get it. I'm not trying to say that concussions and CTE aren't a thing. They clearly are a thing. But if you don't do it too much and it's the wrestler's choice, then it's fine. Cody, it's not like he's some rookie. He knows what he's doing. Also, it was a complete, like, they gimmicked the chair. It's just the edge caught the back of his head. Like, shit happens. I don't know. I thought it was great because it has been so long since I've seen a chair shot to the head that it was so, like, again, it's if you start doing it every week, not good. But it's been so long. Like, I was so fucking stunned by it that it made the impact that it was supposed to. Yeah, was it unfortunate that the edge of the chair caught the back of his head? Sure. Like, you could tell right away that was not what was intended to happen. And I'm sure Dillinger or Sean Spears felt shitty about it. But people, I mean, get like fucking Meltzer and Keller, like, fuck off. Get off your high horse.
Yeah, like, listen, this wasn't The Rock versus Mankind where there was 30 chair shots to the head in one match. This was a well calculated. They knew what they were doing.
Right.
Like, they did it to make a statement, to make a buzz. I mean, come on, you fucking marks. Like, it's not like Cody didn't go to Sean and say, lay one on me.
Right.
I mean, you could see Cody's, look at the freeze frame. Cody's hands are completely down at his sides, palms back.
It was a choreographed spot. It's not like Sean Spears took liberties in the ring. Like, grown man who's the fucking vice president of the company said, lay a chair shot on me. When Kevin Owens did it to Vince McMahon and gave him the headbutt and cut him the hard way. Yeah.
Nobody fucking went nuts.
Especially not like, and you can tell, like, most of the old timers were like, chair shots are dangerous. You know, I'm glad that we don't do it all the time anymore. But this was fine. It's the fucking people trying to make people doing clickbait shit like Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller, or like some of these fucking Mark fans that are like, there's no place for that in our business. You know, like, it's like, who the fuck?
I hope I never have to see anything like that again. Yeah. Mom, can I have some more Kool-Aid?
Yeah, it was stupid. You know, we talked about this off mic. If there was anything in that match that shouldn't be done anymore, it's the fucking side apron bump that Darby Allin took from Cody, which, like,
nobody has fucking talked about.
Yeah, which you could break your back. I can't remember who it was. Well, it was one of the podcasts I listened to. They brought it up, and I know Lance Storm brought it up on Twitter. Like, this, you should stop doing this, or your career is going to be very short.
And apparently, he does that often.
His back is going to be so fucked. I knew not like that guy. I don't know what, like, you were telling me, I think, that he's like a super sort of a deep cut indie guy. Like, I had never even heard of that guy before. When I went to look,
I'm not gonna pretend like I ever heard of him either. I read up on him.
Yeah, when I went to before the show, I went on to like Wikipedia or somewhere to like see the full card, and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he wrestling Cody? Like, but it was cool. I mean, I liked that he came out with the body bag. That was pretty cool. Like, it was. I
loved that it went Broadway.
Yeah,
and I love that Cody was trying to get 5 more minutes.
What a cool booking decision that was.
So different. I love the time limits. I fucking love it. They're doing such little cool shit. It makes it so different. Just those little things, you know. And the last point I want to make, and I know you're going to agree with me on this one, the commentary. Not the last point. I'm going to make 2 more points. The commentary on this show was fucking a million times better.
I wonder why.
Marvez out of that fucking booth.
Yeah.
The one thing, though, I'd say that they're still very weak on is their production value.
Yep, they got to get better. They still miss too many things.
Yeah, they gotta get better. The backstage segments look rough.
Yep.
I think Kenny did a good job on like the like when he was like I loved when Cutler was like Blink 182.
Yeah.
That was funny. Like I actually liked some of the Fighter Fest stuff, but the production value of the show, like it was a lot different for the show than it was for the pre-show. The pre-show was fucking awful, but if they're going to compete on TNT with WWE, if that's what they're trying to do, and they're going to be on prime time, they got to bring somebody in to run that shit because it is.
Yep.
It is.
So, not going to say much because I totally agree. They miss too much stuff. They don't do replays of enough stuff. Just stuff that, you almost take for granted that WWE does. They don't even think about it. Like
You're right.
they're doing it for so long.
Muscle memory. Yeah.
Right. The one thing before we close out, I've obviously been a closeout on wrestling. I've always been pretty critical of the Young Bucks. Like they're not my favorite. They're probably never going to be, but I popped so hard for the Street Fighter gimmick. I loved it. I thought that was so great.
Yeah, it was. It's funny. So they came out, and my son turns to me and goes, "We're going to see a Hadouken," and I was like, yeah. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, stupid child. And then literally in the middle of the match, we get a triple Hadouken, which it was campy and
Totally
kind of exposes the business a little bit, but at a fucking fight gaming convention.
Yep. Know your environment. Right. Exactly.
It was awesome. And the crowd popped and my son almost fell off the back of the couch. He jumped so high.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Like to the point where like, I know that Kenny's a big gamer and I know that the Bucks are kind of gamers too, but if they had done this gimmick anywhere else, it's too cheesy, but doing it where they did it, perfect. If you've been paying attention for the last couple weeks, our Summit at Sea, we had our 2-part Spidey Spectacular. We're back to normal this week, kind of. We just did a really long segment on wrestling, but this will serve as sort of the epilogue to our Spider-Man arc because Spider-Man Far From Home was released this week on Tuesday. The reaction by critics and fans alike has been sort of universally beloved. But since we spent so much time talking about Spider-Man the last couple of weeks, it would be remiss of us not to talk about the movie. Before I get going, Frank, what did you think?
I loved it. Overall, I thought that I loved the story. I felt like there was so much more Peter Parker wanting to just be a high school kid and do high school kid things versus having to be the hero that the world needs him to be, and he knows he has the responsibility to be. It was like they pounded you over the head with it, but not in an obnoxious enough way. It was
right.
It was done really well, and like you really felt for him. You were like, God damn it, all he wants to do is give Mary Jane that necklace. And should we say spoilers? Are we going to talk about shit?
Yeah, we're going to. So everybody listening now that hasn't seen the movie, I want you to listen to our podcast, but honestly, turn us off until you've seen it because there are some shocking, I think pretty shocking stuff, especially in the post-credits stingers for this movie, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the major plot twists in the movie. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, turn us off. If you don't care about being spoiled, welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
So I'm not a Jake Gyllenhaal guy, but I thought he was awesome in this movie.
So good.
So good. I love the way they did the Mysterio thing. I love the way they tied it back to like Iron Man.
Yeah.
And, and how he was the one that invented the virtual reality simulator that Tony was using at the beginning of, was it Civil War?
Yes.
It was in the scenes where he's fighting Spider-Man and he's putting Spider-Man in, what's it called?
The Illusions?
In the Illusions. I felt like I was sitting in a comic book. It might be my favorite thing.
Yep.
Cinematically.
Yep.
That they've done in this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to this point.
Yeah, if you go to our accompanying website and you read Johnny Beaver's review, Steve Ditko had to be smiling from heaven. This was a I mean, it was, the first appearance Mysterio come to life. It looked like a Ditko comic that moved. It was so well done. It was exactly what I thought forever was going to be impossible to pull off with Mysterio. They managed to do
That's
it.
why when I first saw the first trailer with Mysterio in it, I kind of like bit my lip and I was like, "Ooh, how the fuck are they going to do this?"
Yeah.
But of course, Bill's referring to our sister website, baggedboardedandboxed.com. You can go there. There's 2 articles about Spider-Man Far From Home written by John Beaver. One is a spoiler light, so if you haven't seen the movie, read that one. One is a spoiler heavy, so once you see the movie, then you can read that one, and it won't spoil anything for you. But
Johnny Beaver doesn't miss any. He doesn't miss anything as far as callbacks to comics, Easter eggs. He's got it all covered. Those articles are really well written.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the last our 2-part Spidey Spectacular, besides the incredibly ferocious and horny seagulls that we were surrounded by the entire recording of our episode, the one thing that comes clear is that Johnny Beaver is a walking Spider-Man encyclopedia. Like you can snap your fingers, and without any preparation, he can just talk in detail and be 100% accurate. So, but anyway, so back to the movie. Yeah, I mean, it was great. And one of the things that I really didn't like in Homecoming was the Mary Jane character. But she turned it around for me in this one. I found her very cute and very the chemistry was like boiling over between the two of them. I still don't totally understand the decisions for that character in this incantation, but
I do actually.
Well, please enlighten me.
When I say I understand them, it's like she's never going to be the Mary Jane from the comic books. Just like I said on our part 1 of our Spidey thing, Mary Jane has still not been adapted for screen, truthfully. Like Kirsten Dunst wasn't that either. I think, if you're going to redo the Mary Jane character, this girl in the social media age we're living in is a much more likely romantic partner for Peter Parker than the sort of buxom supermodel. I mean, even in the comics, it was always like a thing where they winked at it like, we know that this girl's never going to go for this guy, but you suspend your disbelief because it's a comic book, which I think is a lot harder to do on screen. But I think making her this sort of also introverted kind of character, I mean, I think that's why the chemistry was so palpable in this movie, because they seem like they would be 2 people that would be into each other. I think it's, this is like the millennial version of Mary Jane, which is, I think, a conscious decision they made. Whether, comic book purists there's always going to be that segment that is like, no, she must have red hair and huge tits. You're never going to satisfy those people, which is fine. I think they realize that. And I'm usually kind of one of those people. Like, I want to see it the way it's drawn. But in this case, like you said, I thought Tom Holland and Zendaya did a great job in this movie. I mean, it doesn't hurt that she was given so much more to do in this movie, and she rose to the challenge. Like, I don't know. I had no idea who Zendaya was before Homecoming. She apparently was famous.
I did.
I didn't. But and after Homecoming, I was like, I don't know. Like, we'll see. That's why even
she was on that show. She was on the show with Bella Thorne on Disney.
Oh, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is either.
Well, I had Kayla, who back then, so we used to watch all that stuff. But anyway,
Kayla, right?
So I could do with less Ned.
Yes, too much. They used Ned the same way they did in the first movie. It's just he wasn't needed quite as much in this movie, basically because the stuff between Peter and MJ was great and funny. Martin Starr and the kid from Grand Budapest Hotel who plays Flash Thompson were more than enough comedy. They were great. So
I don't know why they even had JB Smoove in the movie.
No, I think John said that in his review, and that was the same thing in the audience that I was in. It was a packed house. He didn't get any big laughs. The biggest laughs were Martin Starr as the awkward, bumbling teacher, and Flash Thompson, who that guy stole every scene he was in Homecoming, and he does the same thing here. He's friggin' hilarious.
I like at the end where he's like, "Mother couldn't come."
Yeah, it's so great. I love one of my biggest laughs. It's such a weird throwaway scene, but when they first get to Venice and he's doing the selfie stick, and then somebody runs by and just hits him in the nuts for no reason. I thought that was so great.
Nut taps are always funny.
The first, I mean, the first third of the movie where like there was barely any Spider-Man at all in it was so good, just because it let you live in the high school Peter, which we just haven't gotten because, as we talked about in our podcast, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were both too old by the time they did it. You know, their Spider-Man was basically set in the real world already, and this is the first time we've really gotten a chance to live like that. This felt like the first third of this movie felt like a high school 80s teen movie.
Yeah, this was definitely the most high school-y Spider-Man we've gotten, which I think is important.
Yes.
You want to talk about the post-credit scenes?
No, I mean, before we do that, I just want to I'm going to put out there like this is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Like now this is number one. I agree with John. I would give it I usually do the stars rating system. I would give it 4.8 stars out of 5. John gave it 95 out of 100. I would agree. I thought Tom Holland has now become he's now mastered it. He's the definitive Spider-Man on screen. I don't think that can be really argued. I think just like we talked about, when these movies nail the villain, 9 times out of 10 is going to mean they nail the movie. And Gyllenhaal played this with such the right mixture of wink wink and campiness combined with real pathos, and the heel turn in the middle of the movie. Like, people that know Mysterio and know Spider-Man comics, John described it as, comic fans were tapping their toes for the whole first half of the movie waiting for the heel turn. Was so well executed. The scene where he fools Peter in the bar with the illusions is so good, and gets Edith from him. Incorporating Edith into it to make the illusions so powerful was amazing. I thought they did such a good job having Robert Downey Jr. be in this movie without being in this movie. Like, Tony Stark was such a looming specter over the movie, was so great. Having Peter sort of be suffering almost a PTSD from the events of Endgame was so great. And having the theme of are you going to step up and be the hero the world needs you to be? Did Tony make the right choice? These were great themes. I thought they did everything right. I do the reason the movie doesn't get 100 for me is I had 2 slight criticisms. One, whereas I agree with you that I really liked the way they referred back to both Iron Man 1 and Iron Man and Civil War with Gyllenhaal's motivation, I do think it's kind of a shame that his motivation was the exact same motivation as Michael Keaton from the first one. And that's kind of a thing they've used the disgruntled Stark employee a bunch of times. I wish it had been a little more. I get why they had to do it because Tony was such an important part of this movie. They kind of had no choice.
The cinematic universe overall, though.
Yeah, but I kind of wish what I kind of wish in retrospect was that they had come up with a different motivation for the Vulture. So this felt a little more fresh. It's God, does Stark Industries have any employees that don't hate Stark? That's kind of, I had that thought. It seemed like it had been kind of a villain motivation that had been done before. But on the other, at the same time, I'm not sure there was any other way to do this. So I don't know if that's criticism or not, but it did strike me during the movie. The other thing that I wish they had done a little bit better was the way Spider-Man eventually defeats Mysterio in this movie is he uses in the movie they called it his Peter Tingle, which is a funny through line joke in the movie, but it's the real first sort of him embracing his spider sense, which when it happens, when he does it and he's able to master it to beat Mysterio, it's great. What I wish they had done, though, was show him sort of struggling to use it and failing once or twice to make it seem a little more earned when it happens. Because when it happens, it's all of a sudden he just uses it and masters it. I wish that in other fights, or maybe even back in Homecoming, they had done a little bit more with him trying to figure out how to use his Spidey sense. So the payoff was a little bit better. It's sort of kind of a little bit comes out of nowhere. They make jokes about it with Aunt May and the Peter Tingle. And please,
was it even a thing in Homecoming?
They mentioned it super briefly. That's what I'm saying. They kind of tried to do it in a comedic manner and then have it pay off, which, it works. It doesn't not work.
It worked for me. I mean, I got an impact from it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think if in one of the fights, like when Mysterio kicked the shit out of him, if he had tried to use his spider sense and been unable to figure it out, that would have been, and they made it very clear, that would have been really cool to see like a progression. Again, these are nitpicky things that keep it from being a 100 out of 100. But on the whole, I rank it. I now have it ahead of Homecoming. So the two Holland movies are 1 and 2 for me in terms of Spidey movies.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I probably have it ahead of Spider-Man 2, which was my number 1 before.
Right. I mean, it was a
Tom Holland is the clear. After this movie, I would say it's not even close. He's the best
Yeah.
Spider-Man we've ever had on screen.
Totally agree.
All right, so post-credit scenes.
Oh,
You want to yell at me?
a little.
Okay.
So give your reaction first, so the rest of our podcast listenership can yell at you through me.
Okay. So I'm not stepping it back, but I just want to reiterate what my point is and was when I posted on Twitter. Leading up to the movie, I kept seeing tweet after tweet after tweet and article after article after article online, and I didn't read any spoilers, so I didn't know what it was. People kept saying, wow, what a great movie, and please, whatever you do, don't miss the post-credit scenes. Wowzers. Oh my God. Talk about a jump out of your seat moment. Wow. That's the best post-credit scene yet. And I think Dan Slott was actually one of them, surprisingly, or not surprisingly. So when I went there, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So I think I'm thinking what happened is, I'm not saying the post-credit scenes weren't great. I'm saying that they didn't elicit the reaction out of me that I was expecting them to based on what everybody else was saying their reaction was. So in the first one, which is the one nobody even mentioned the second one. They're saying there was 2, but they were like, oh, and that mid-credit scene, holy shit. Yeah, when J.K. Simmons popped up on the screen, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh, holy shit, because it's a big deal that you recast. It's the only person recast.
Yeah.
And yeah, it made my jaw drop. The unmasking, like, to me, that's just another plot device that they decided to do. That didn't make me jump out of my seat that he got unmasked. I think it was more, I'm guessing what everybody was talking about was more the reaction of J.K. Simmons showing up. But that's not a jump out of your seat moment to me.
I think that was as consequential a mid-credit scene as there has been in the MCU. Like, really second only to the first time you see Thanos.
More than Thor's hammer?
Yeah, because, I mean, I feel like Thor had been in production. Like, people knew Thor was coming.
More than, so it was really, we're starting the Avengers initiative?
Really, I mean, maybe that would be because it was the first one. But, like, what made this so shocking for me was, A, J.K. Simmons comes back, which is like, it's rare that you see an actor jump from one iteration to another. Like, that's awesome. And I think it was Marvel's, willingness to realize, like, we're never recasting this better. Like, this guy is the best J. Jonah Jameson. And I think it was a really cool decision on their part. So that it would have been good enough. It would have been a great post-credit scene if it was just J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle and doing his Spider-Man as a menace thing. But then the unmasking to me is like, that changes everything. Like, not grand scope Avengers level thing, but that changes everything for the sequel for Spider-Man. They could not have done something more impactful to Spider-Man than that. And why it's also so crazy is because they did this in the comics. It was one of the most controversial moments ever, and it was so reviled that they had to retcon it with the devil, as we talked about. They had to bring Mephisto in to rewrite reality. Like, this is not looked back on as a good decision. Maybe because of the way they wrote it after they unmasked him. Maybe if they had gone a different way, it could have been better, which is certainly an argument that you can have. But to me, it makes the future of Spider-Man movies radically different than it would have been.
Agreed.
Like, I told you what it would have been. Like,
Agreed.
what it would have been.
Hold on. Agreed. But when I hear people use the term "wow" and "jump out of your seat" and "holy shit," and I'm thinking just what you said, like Marvel Cinematic Universe altering consequence. This is yes, and it's important to the character, and it's important to where the Spider-Man movies are going, which it's huge, and it's like, oh, that's where we're going. But it really doesn't have any impact on anything but the Spider-Man movies.
Well, I don't know.
Franchise.
It depends. It
And
depends.
at this point, we don't even know how much of that Spider-Man franchise is still going to continue to exist within the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, it's Sony would be retarded to give up the partnership, because especially the way this movie is doing both critically and financially, they would be absolutely insane. I think Spider-Man will continue to be a part of the MCU. They certainly would not have done this, I don't think. They certainly wouldn't have made a movie that Iron Man's presence was felt so much, where they name dropped Thor and Captain Marvel and brought and had Nick Fury in it. There's so much MCU in this movie that, to me, it was a clear indication that the partnership's going to continue. But it also can be an MCU altering thing, because if Spider-Man's going to be the new Iron Man, this is a step in that direction, because everybody knew Tony Stark was Iron Man, and he had to deal with people coming after Pepper. Now the next movie, maybe somebody goes after Marissa Tomei or what. I mean, this brings in a whole new thing. So, I mean, yes, it's more impactful on smaller scale, Spider-Man scale, but it also can be impactful. And I think just because exactly what you said, like when I heard people were saying, oh my God, I fell out of my chair, my first thought was like, oh, they introduced the next Thanos. Like maybe maybe it's Norman Osborn, maybe it's Dr. Doom.
And listen, it's my own fault for fucking reading the tweets and stuff, for getting overhyped. There's nothing that can live up to that.
But for me, though, that's why it was so shocking, because it wasn't that. Like when I really thought, like when I'm watching it, and then Jake Gyllenhaal's like, Spider-Man's real name is, and then it sort of goes staticky. I thought it was like, oh, they were just trolling. And then they do it. I literally almost fell out of my, it was so not what I expected to happen. And I think that's what people's Twitter reaction was more than anything. Like, it's just a direction you did not expect them to go in. Most people were theorizing that, especially with the post-credit scene of Homecoming, where Vulture and Scorpion meet in prison, I think most people were sort of anticipating Sony has always had a boner for the Sinister Six thing, so they're going to do that. Like, and if I had seen that, there was a lot of people saying that they were going to reveal that the old Stark Tower with the A on it was going to be the new Oscorp. They were going to do something like that. Was a heavy rumor, and that would have totally been awesome and made sense. This was just a direction I was like absolutely stunned they went in.
I expected them to introduce Norman Osborn.
So did I, and I'm kind of glad they didn't, to be honest with you.
One more thing as to what kind of tampered the unmasking to me is that, and this was a note I had that I wanted to make during we were talking about the movie, was he has his mask off in this movie a lot.
Yeah, true.
Like in the middle of fight scenes, like
when he had this jester mask on.
But even, yeah, like that. And then, after the jester mask falls off or before he puts it on, he's swinging around and he does nothing on. And then even at the end, like he's walking around on the bridge with his mask off. And I know we got to get a certain amount of camera time of Tom Holland's face, but I don't know. He had his mask off a lot. I didn't understand why. Okay, so the second post-credit scene. Now this one I liked a lot more than the first one.
Okay.
And I tend to disagree with Johnny on this, and you, based on some texts we've had. And maybe it's just what I'm hoping, but I guess my question kind of is now, it's how long has Maria Hill and Talos, or Nick Fury, been Talos and his wife? Because the way this whole cinematic universe is set up, it could be all the way back to Civil War. It could be all the way back to Winter Soldier. It could be the entire time.
It's not. I don't think so. I mean, here's what I think. I think so. Watching the movie, and I'm curious to go watch it again now that I know what the second post-credit scene is, because, and John pointed this out, he recognized it more than I did. Nick Fury and Maria Hill are like borderline incompetent in this movie. And now looking back, it's because it's not them. It's Skrulls playing them. Like Fury is like sort of an idiot in this movie. But I don't think he was like that in, Winter Soldier. Fury wasn't even in Civil War really. So, but I think it's sometime after Winter Soldier. But yeah, that is a big question now. How long has Fury been up there and what has he been doing? And I think that's going to be a gateway to like whatever cosmic thing they're doing next. Like he's been sitting up there with Skrulls or Kree, or it opens up. I think it was a very important. I like the scene. Like I didn't come across right in text messages, but I like the scenes sort of equally. I thought they were equally important. I thought it was like it's the last thing I expected when they turned into, because usually the second post credits scene is the throwaway.
Well, that's kind of what I'm also wondering. It's like, was that scene just a complete red herring?
See, I don't think so. I wish. I'm hoping that he's been up there for as long as possible, and because I think that has more. There's more you can do with that, and there's more cool shit directions you can go with that. I'm curious to see, like, a lot for me. Like, I don't know that I care so much about how long it'd be cool if it was a long time, but I care more about like what the reason is he's up there.
Well, so they did make the comment at one point where they're walking about the sleeper cells of Krees.
Yeah.
Johnny seems, and a couple people seem to feel like we're going towards the Kree Skrull wars.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, just because of how much the Kree were on the TV show, S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's possible, but I don't think so. But I do think this scene was important because it sort of reestablishes, like he even says like, okay, time to get back to work. So it's like
they're doing something.
Okay, the Infinity Saga is over. The next thing is starting. I sort of wish they hadn't. I wish the last line of that stinger wasn't, has anybody seen my shoes? Because they played it for comedy a little bit. I wish it had been a little more serious. I do think it was important. I think him and Maria Hill being up there is going to be important. I'll be really stunned especially because in Winter Soldier, Fury gets shot and is almost killed. At that point, when they were operating on him, I think they would have realized if he was a Skrull.
Well, I guess I mean like after that, because that's kind of when he disappears.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe after that movie, like at the end of Winter Soldier, he meets them at his own grave and he's like, I'm going off to do things. That's when I think it could happen, because he really is not in Civil War, Infinity War, or Endgame. He's in the one shot at Tony Stark's funeral at Endgame, which could easily be Talos or a Skrull. So I'm curious to see how long. If they say he's been up there since Captain Marvel, I'll be a little pissed off, because I don't think it'll make sense.
Yeah, but he could have been doing like what he did in the comic books with his life model decoys too. Like it could have been off and on.
Yeah, that's a lot to introduce.
What are you introducing?
The life model decoys.
No. I'm not saying life model decoys. I'm saying instead of life model decoys, I'm saying sometimes it's been him, sometimes it's been Talos.
Maybe, although to me it seemed like, I don't know, maybe it's just my own, I'm reading into it what I want to read into it, but it seemed like he had been up there for a while, because he's like, all right, I guess I got to get back to work. It seemed like it wasn't like a week, but maybe you're right. Maybe it'll be like sometimes he's been there, sometimes he hasn't. But we also don't even know like how far away he is. Where the fuck is he? Is he a billion light years away? Has he gone out to respond to some sort of crisis that's coming? Or there's so much that it opens up, and it's it's a little weird.
You can't use the term crisis. That's DC.
Right, that's copyrighted. But it is a little weird. Like, of all the people I expected to sort of be the gateway to like the cosmic part of the next phase, like Nick Fury probably would have been last.
Yeah.
On my list. It would have been like, I figured it would be Thor or the Guardians of the Galaxy, but this is another thing of Marvel, like, they subvert our expectations. They do a pretty good job, and you got to think they have this thing mapped out. And this is a good time to mention Marvel today announced that for the first time in a couple of years, they're going to be doing a presentation at Hall H at Comic-Con July 20th, where they're going to outline, Feige said they're outlining Phase 4. So we're going to find out. Like, most people have kind of used intuition and production schedules and stuff to sort of sort of put together where they think, like, we know Black Widow is already being filmed, so we know that's coming. We're pretty sure a Guardians, we know a Guardians 3 is coming.
Yeah,
people are pretty sure. Yeah, Black Panther and Captain Marvel both made over $1 billion. They'd be ridiculous not to do sequels to them. So we know those are coming. Most people think a Doctor Strange sequel is coming, which makes sense to me. And then, we've heard casting rumors about the Eternals and Shang-Chi. But I thought the way they worded this announcement, where Kevin Feige was like, we'll outline phase 4. It'll be Kevin Feige and some surprise panelists, which means I think they have some casting that we're probably not going to see coming. Just like the last time they were at Hall H at Comic-Con is when they brought Brie Larson out at the very end, like with no build-up, like no one knew that was coming. I think we could see something like that. So it'll be really interesting to see what Marvel, especially what the timeline is, like what movies come out when, what comes out. I think Black Widow is going to be the next MCU movie, but then what order they decide to go in after that, I'm going to live stream that. That's going to be awesome to watch. I remember when they laid out phase 3 and they made at that time it was Infinity War Part 1 and Infinity War Part 2. Like just was so exciting and set everybody on fire. That's when they also revealed that Captain America was going to be Civil War, which hopefully we'll get those kind of cool revelations and shocking moments with their Comic-Con announcement.
All right, Bill. So a lot packed into that episode. It's kind of good to get back to our regular sort of format. Although I do miss the sound of the waves and the the rabid mating seagulls in the background while we're recording.
Yeah, me too. It was so peaceful. I think the Summit at Sea is I think we'd be remiss not to make it an annual event.
Yes, the Summit at Sea Phase 2.
Exactly. We'll be announcing the schedule for the Summit at Sea Phase 2 after Marvel does their thing.
Correct. Yeah, in Hall H. Actually, we couldn't get Hall H. We're in Hall J, which is akin to like a broom closet.
We're in the convention center annex.
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple people I would want to give a shout out to out in the podcast community that have been helping Bill and Frank eat pop culture online and been spreading the love. First and foremost, Killer Rabbit podcast over in these are Yorkshire blokes, 3 Yorkshire guys over in England. If you love just listening to 3 British guys talk nonsense in their accents with a lot of funny movie references and a lot of Monty Python references, check out Killer Rabbit. It's pretty good stuff. And on Twitter, they're at Killer Rabbit Pod. Another one I want to give a shout out to is the Never a Straight Answer podcast. Now, these are 2 Manchester dudes over in England talking about anything and everything. So their Twitter handle is NASA_never. So NASA_never. So give them a follow, give them a listen, and just want to say thank you to them for piping us into the podcast community social affair there. I also wanted to thank Ghost of the Stratosphere, which is another kind of comic book / pop culture, but more comic book podcast, for kind of engaging us on Twitter regarding our Spider-Man rankings. They seem to be split right down the middle on their podcast. One of their guys vehemently disagreed with us and had, the Amazing Spider-Man movies up top, and another guy had the Raimi trilogy up top. So it's good to see that there's division in the ranks amongst all nerdy podcasters. So just wanted to thank them for reaching out. And I think Pint O Comics podcast, they reached out as well. So thanks, guys. And, anybody out there listening, we look forward to chatting with all of you online. Hit us up on Twitter at BF Eat Pop Culture. Send us an email, eatpopculture@gmail.com, and head over to our website, baggedboardedandboxed.com. We've got Johnny Beaver writing articles about Spider-Man. You got me talking about my pool list on there. Bill, I think, is going to be giving us some Stranger Things reviews once he gets through that this weekend.
You betcha.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be posting those on Twitter. And just keep listening. Go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, leave a review, leave a rating. It really helps us out. And Bill, what do you got?
And to be honest with anybody out there listening, if you are interested in writing anything, go on Twitter and at me or Frank or the shows, send us a DM, whatever. If you want to write anything, anything in pop culture, you have an opinion on something, you want to write an op-ed, you want to do a review, we're looking for people to write.
Fan fiction. You want to write fan fiction? Write fan fiction.
Sure. I mean, there's a place for everything. Me and Frank and John can't possibly cover everything. So if there's something out there, even if it's, I don't care what movie. If you want to go review a movie, you want to review a TV show, I don't care what it is. Content is content. So if, obviously, you're not going to get rich writing for us, but if it's something you want to explore creatively, you want to, flex your writing muscles, this is an easy way to do it.
Build up a portfolio so that you can go somewhere else and make and get rich writing. Anybody and everybody's welcome. This is a safe space, no judgment. So shoot us a DM, and we'll get you set up.
Absolutely.
All right, Bill. I'll talk to you later.
Right.
Be well.